So if we could move on to condo conversion, is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
I'm assuming our hard stop today is 1 o'clock. Is that good with everybody? So we got very helpful information from Michael, and what occurred to me with this is that there's a lot of different scenarios. We have situations where we have large complexes that were originally funded with HUD funding, had to be affordable housing. They have to be affordable housing for like 25 or 30 years. And when that time is up, that's what sends us into a panic, like the Bobbin Mill, losing the Bobbin Mill to affordable housing. And we might think about different levels of protection, because the Bobbin Mill going condo or Northgate going condo is completely different than some of the downtown luxury apartments right now that cost $5,000 a month or more to rent, turning those into condos.
And can I ask a clarifying question? Is there a minimum number of units for this ordinance? I read somewhere that was 10 and above, but because I was also thinking about homes, because when Sharon was speaking, I was thinking about, the first home I bought in Burlington, there were people living there as if it was a 4-unit rental. When I bought it, it transferred into a 1-family home. So this idea of renters getting kind of kicked out of their apartments happens in other circumstances than condo conversion, right? Like anytime something that could be a single family home is sold, a renter could get kicked out. So, and there's no protection.
Oh, even in multifamily homes.
Right. So there's no protection in just sort of like the open market as it is now, which I'm not saying that's, in my scenario, was not like harmful to people at all, but sometimes it is, and there's no protection. So for me, and then I realized I didn't know if that was applicable. Could you, sell off 4 units?
So this is not applicable. The current ordinance is not applicable to single family homes, duplexes, not applicable to properties that meet the following requirements: land tract with 10 or fewer.
So it's 10 or fewer, okay.
Housing units. That's a land tract.
Okay, so this is big
This is bigger.
Big complexes. Okay. So I wonder, I always ask this.
Oh, that's interesting, because the ones we have seen convert have been the smaller units, I think. The ones I can think of.
The most recent one I dealt with,
2022,
2023, was Clear Point. And there's been, I was actually doing the math earlier just to kind of give you guys numbers, but out of that development, there's been about 19 of them that have changed over in the last, since 2022.
And Clear Point might be have their, let's not look at that. That could lead you to believe that something like that happens every year, but is that the only one that's happened in 20 years?
It's the only one that I've ever dealt with, but.
Well, I think for me, it's like how.
And you've been here
I think
more than 20 years.
Across my desk, but it went to somebody else's desk, but.
How many units are even in play here is I guess what I'm asking. Like how many developments are there that have more than 10 units and could potentially be converted to condos? It seems like there's not a lot of those.
Well, I think it's really been the trend more recently, when this was created, probably that you can't really finance condo projects today.
Right. No,
and that's more like the last 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
So our biggest problems are probably in that category. of these projects that have been built downtown that are all rental. You know, Moreau built a project that was originally going to be home ownership, I think it's 25 units. And it ended up being all rental. So it's projects like that I think are kind of the target of this. Stratos is one of the few that was built as condos.
We can try to just ask the assessor for that information.
I would love to just get a list, because I mean, honestly, for me, it helps to just, I'll walk around town and look at the buildings and just make it real and think about, you know, you can kind of get a sense of maybe the income level we're talking about and what the size is and how many people might be affected. That would
So
be great.
rental, so developments, anything over the size of 10, and should we look at both kind of the list of owner of condominiums
Yeah, and current rentals.
and
Like
rentals?
I know for condos, I know that, you know, there's the Vermont house.
Yeah, you know, what's
There's
interesting
the
is
one at
there's still a ton of,
30 condos. Those are
Yeah.
condos.
there's still, within anything that's condo, there's still tons of rentals. Condo doesn't mean that it is
Oh, no,
owner
yeah,
occupied.
totally. People rent it out, they own it, but then they rent it out, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's very, very common, ones.
I mean, the other thing is whether, I don't know how you could do this, where you, if you have a building that has 25 units, then you know, condoizing several of them, about the entire piece. I don't know the mechanics of that, but there's a whole building.
Right.
You know, this sort of contemplates a whole building getting converted, right? And you know, that's what the ordinance was, you know, primarily designed to do. That's what I think this changes focused on, whether landlord can decide to, and maybe you can't, because legally the mechanism is that the whole, if you create a condo within a building, that it sort of can't have it be a private building because there are these
All right, well,
aspects
then
of
it's almost like the
condominium.
main landlord just owns condos in a way, I mean, and rents them out.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I've been trying to wrap my mind around
I think it
that.
would be very difficult to do. It seems to me very complicated in terms
So-
of deeds and stuff. But as a practical matter, like what happened at their point, the landlord is still holding all of these units and continuing to rent them. So even once they're condominiumized, after they're condominiumized, they're still owned by one person, and
Right.
they can continue to rent those.
And so
And they
that's
really
when,
have to.
that's when the owner in that scenario could then decide to sell off, to condoize in reality, different homeowner, one or more of those units, so that then you've got an ownership which is different than a singular type. It's a varied, it's condo rental in that case, right? If I've got a building, Blair Point, and I condoize everything, but I still own, I'm the owner of Auburn Condominium, right? I can decide at a certain point that I'm not going to bid one, I'm going to sell that.
Right.
And perhaps that is what some thinking in this context.
Well, yeah, I think that I don't think most people want to go with an entire, especially a large building, entirely empty. It's a transition period. It's just, I think, practical for the owner to figure out how they're going to transition. Do you want to go through just go through a read of this ordinance, and we can flag our decision points So
I
the,
apologize for asking the question that I could have answered by just reading this wonderful. But
well,
I
I actually think it's important in the ordinance committee to go through a read of the ordinances, because it always flushes out things
Yeah.
that if you don't do that, you miss.
right.
I believe there's no dumb questions, despite what my wife keeps yelling.
Despite all the dumb questions.
My own questions. Sorry, Wendy.
Okay, this chapter 18, article 5 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Burlington be and hereby is amended by amending section 18-300, statement of purpose, blah, 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 blah. To read as follows.
I don't want you to read through all of this, because we can read them ourselves. Maybe comment on changes either that are being suggested.
Well, I actually want to go through these and see if there's things that we want to change in here other than what was initially flagged. Because even the first one, I think is in question.
Yeah.
To support the retention of rental housing in the city. I don't see that as currently our goal.
Priority.
I strongly disagree with that. So,
Okay,
I mean, I don't think rental housing is worthless, but I think I would suggest an edit for the availability of broad
I would
of
say
options and
to support to support a balanced combination of rental housing and home ownership in the city.
yeah. What do you think of that?
I don't support changing this at all. This is another one of those throw things up on the wall. You know, I don't object.
Why not?
Why not? Because I think that we need to retain rental housing, and to the extent to which we need to build. We want to increase the numbers of homeowners or condominium owners, then we should do that in large part through the expansion of the stock, and to the extent to which we are going to have to mitigate the displacement and it comes from what in my mind this is a gentrification also. We need to maintain this. So that's why. So I'm not opposed to increasing, you know, the numbers, but I don't do it. I don't believe it's done through the conversation of.
Our city is currently 30% owner occupied, and I do not think that as we're going through this exercise, that our mission here is currently to support the retention of rental housing in the city. So I think that we should, we wouldn't be going through this exercise if that were the case. So I would suggest language and open to other similar language to support a balance of home ownership and rental housing in the city. And then 2, I agree with 2.
So I just want to register my opposition to that. The concept of a balance is vague enough to drive a house through. Let's just get that on the record.
Well, it's also just the intent. It's not.
Like I said, I'm not telling
So
you what you should propose, and I'm not, you know, like if you want to take votes as we go along, that's fine.
Yeah.
For the chair's prerogative, but.
We will register you as a no on that particular change. Becca, is that language agreeable to you?
It's generally agreeable. I wouldn't mind looking at it.
We'll look at another draft.
A little more specific.
My
Such as,
Maybe putting, you know, what do we mean by balance? 50-50.
I don't think
is
we
our
want to
goal.
be that specific, honestly.
But no, I agree with the sentiment. And I mean, honestly, as this is written right now, I think it's really.
I mean, if you wanna put it
Discriminatory
50-50, I do
about-
think that that is the number at which generally cities are considered healthy. But,
Yeah, I don't know the data on that, but that I support, certainly this is extremely skewed towards rental housing, which dominates our real estate market currently and makes it really difficult for people to buy housing. And, you know, build any kind of wealth, which is, you know, it's out of whack. So I think needs to be changed, so I support that.
okay,
Let me, in terms of the big picture, as Joan mentioned, much of what is out of whack is well beyond what this ordinance addresses, which is the financing of that.
Of course,
And
you gotta do what we can.
yeah, yes, I think that, yeah, okay.
so the second one, to prevent large-scale displacement of low and moderate income persons. Anybody object to that language or want to change it? To mitigate the impact on tenants displaced or threatened by displacement by the conversion of rental housing to condominium or cooperatives. We all agreed. To mitigate the impact of such displacement on the city's housing market. To mitigate the impact of such displacement on the city's housing. Not sure what that means.
In part, it means that you're gonna deal with displacement through gentrification. That's what the fundamental is. It is a recognition, colonization, market lead to gentrification / displacement.
I'm curious, Jean, is your perspective that, and I'm asking
Sure, yeah, that's fair.
respectfully,
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
feel that any increase in home ownership equals gentrification?
No. And I am not opposed to improving the stock and things that might be manifestations of gentrification. I am opposed to displacement of working and poor people and the pricing out and the housing market is such that that's exactly what's going on. That's what will go on with this. This is just a tool to help push out more working people, even more than is happening right now from Burlington. People can't afford to live here, and it's not because there's too many. Number of things, not least of just.
I would say it's certainly not my goal with changing this ordinance to make that happen. I think there's a whole middle ground that we heard from Michael. I mean, I think we're all wanting there to be a lot of planning for conversion on the lower income side as described, which I personally, I don't see. Are you saying you think this ordinance is a tool for gentrification?
I think the proposal is, yes, and I strongly oppose it. Let me say, consistent with, but in the short term time you have been here, I think I have demonstrated a flexibility and a reasonableness to try to get to the right thing. I'm strong in what I believe, but I have done that on numerous cases in just a short period of time, and I am willing to look at changes to the ordinance that will not result in displacement and will not result in an exacerbation. The problem that poor and working people have to afford housing here. And
I guess I asked that question.
I'd like to continue going through this, okay? To provide opportunities for tenants and or public entities to purchase rental housing in order to maintain perpetual affordability of that housing. I'm thinking about kind of some different scenarios which I think are desirable but don't necessarily meet that goal. And one of the things that concerns me is that we're talking about really private rental housing right now. It's certainly not perpetually affordable, and people are seeing rent increases on a yearly basis. I actually think the goal here is, at a minimum, it's for people to provide opportunities for people to stabilize their housing cost through home ownership. Because once you have that home ownership, your rent isn't going up. Taxes are going up annually, but rent is going up far more than taxes, even though taxes are going up exorbitantly.
The mortgage payments.
That's the point.
Yeah.
So the bulk of your housing cost, which is the mortgage, is stabilized through home ownership. And I would like an intent that reflects that.
I think that's what this says though, Joe.
It doesn't. It says maintains perpetual affordability of that housing.
Because they purchased it.
Purchase rental housing in order to.
First of all, it says maintain. So that is not maintaining, that it doesn't exist now. It's not, what you're converting is not perpetually affordable.
The way I'm reading this is that this says the goal is for people to have the opportunity to purchase rental housing so that it will be maintained perpetually affordable.
Well, that means that when
they buy it.
That means that when they perpetually affordable means that when they sell it, it typically means that there's you have limited equity. And that is something that I heard great objection about in the REIB department, that when they are directed to programs that don't allow them the same equity being a real estate term in this case, not a social equity, but that don't allow them the same opportunities to build equity that other people have. So I do think that having a segment of perpetual affordable housing in our community is extremely important. It has benefited lots of people, but I also don't think that it necessarily has to encompass everything, because it does limit your ability as an individual, and many of these individuals are buying apartments, which will be some of the most affordable home ownership opportunities in our city. And to limit their opportunity to build equity is not always desirable.
Right, because like you make a good buy and then you're limited and then the market goes up and then you don't get your,
You don't get the full
you don't get the
amount.
benefit.
But you see, I think that the reason that there are a list of 10 is because there are multiple purposes. And so trying to make something like this fit all circumstances and therefore watering down is the purpose is I don't believe is the way to go. You want to have a different one that talks about the ability to build wealth in other ways. Sure. I mean, I disagree with the denigration of limited limited equity. The shared equity concept is denigration of that. I know it has worked as wealth building, and allows that unit to be affordable to, again, and in the cases that I know of working people.
I don't see it working as wealth building, but it's worked.
So, well, it is wealth building because people have moved and have used the equity that they've gotten, because it's not like they get no equity. It's shared equity. So they're building. It's sort of, there are a lot of a lot of interests.
I'll agree with you.
There you go.
You can stop.
So
that we can, instead of changing, we can add to this.
So I don't know about adding to this one. I think that again.
Adding another
Yes.
thing that says to to stabilize housing, to provide opportunities to stabilize housing costs through homeownership of entry level homes.
I'm okay with that, believe it or not.
I thought you would be. I was trying. I am listening to you, Jean.
Yeah.
Are you good with that, Becca?
Yeah.
Okay, you got that?
That, no.
To-
Opportunities.
To provide opportunities for stabilizing housing costs through homeownership of entry level homes.
Entry level home.
Well,
Yes,
I mean, it can also
it's
go
very
for
hard, it's
luxury.
very hard to repeat yourself when you're just doing it on the fly. I can't do that.
And I can I can check that on the.
That might be, it was articulated well enough to get me to say I agree with it, so.
I think that was it.
So perhaps,
Okay, the other one is another statement about perpetual affordability.
which is very similar to you're saying, but it's not exactly what you said, because
It's also very similar to the one
Right.
directly
Right.
prior to it, seems
Right.
redundant to me, but
one could read it like that, but I think there's value to the way that we bring it.
to promote the rehabilitation and construction of housing for low and moderate.
Well, I just want to be clear, I strongly disagree with the elimination of existing stuff.
Okay, so, 7, yeah. So what came to us that is crossed out is to provide funds to replace low and moderate income housing lost through conversion of rental housing to condominiums and cooperatives. I am okay with striking that.
Well, I'm curious, it seems like, I know later on, there's elimination of a fee, I believe, and so that, I'm just assuming those two things go together, and that's why it's crossed out.
That's correct.
I don't mind discussing a fee, actually. I don't see it as the whole purpose. I don't see it as part of the purpose, maybe a benefit.
I thought the fee was the thing that makes it so hard to.
The fee, it is because it's so onerous, but I think it's worth considering if we want some fee. Okay. To promote the rehabilitation and construction of housing for low and moderate income persons. I'm good with that.
So to be clear, something like what just happened on 7, where, so we're gonna come back to that. That is, I'm trying to separate, the sort of working through this, and then we get some other language. And this is the first where there has been a
Strike out.
proposal to strike out. And what I'm not hearing, and I'm happy about that, is that we are not making a decision on that at this point in time.
Yeah.
I don't feel ready to make a decision on this, because to me, it's not clear how this connects to the rest of the big picture yet, and I want to be clear on that and consider.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about this when we start. We'll have a conversation about the fees generally, and maybe based on that, we can decide if we want this stricken, adjusted, kept. Okay?
I just wanted to clarify what we're doing. So
Okay.
yes, of course, that is.
They have one on traffic, so they just come back to that.
And I changed the win.
Thank you. We're all good with to promote the rehabilitation and construction of housing for low and moderate income persons. To follow recommendations of the Burlington Affordable Housing Task Force regarding the problems created by the conversion of rental housing to condominiums or cooperatives. That is, we've done many affordable housing task force studies. I don't know if that recommendation has changed in the most recent, if this has been a discussion.
Could I ask
Any-
that to the attorney's office in conjunction, Tito in particular, Director Pine, give some clarity in terms of
Yeah.
the recommendations that this purpose.
Or is this outdated?
Yes,
I suspect that it is, that the particulars are not outdated, but I don't have them off the, the tip of my tongue. And unlike Sharon, I know that I was involved in the passage of this, so just like her in that.
but if we can just ask, yes, if we could ask Brian for any information on condo conversions in terms of task forces. Had so many and study groups, whatever he has related to that, if you could share with us. To expand on existing Vermont law related to conversions to address specific concerns of the city and its citizens and provide special benefits to existing tenants, especially elderly and disabled people. I'm okay with that. I mean, I think that we're gonna go forward with something that continues to try to offer protections to tenants.
I know that the mobile home conversion law is both different, but is something that I think postdates this. Perhaps also Director Pine might be able, in conjunction with the city attorney's office, to just update us on the existing law relating to conversions and include in that any lessons that may glean from the mobile home conversion.
The next one, authority and applicability, it references 24 BSA 2293. Could you provide that for us, Kim?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't know if that's changed or if there's anything else that would be relevant there.